Squirrel. Konasilam Nama. Good evening. It's good to see you all. Welcome to the Business Committee meeting, March 6th. I will call the meeting to order, and it is with great respect and humility. We acknowledge and honor the lands of the Sinimik people. The Sinimik people maintain their profound, unique, and spiritual connection to the land through ageless traditions, teachings, stewardship, and expressions of reciprocity. Are there any additions or deletions or change of orders to the agenda? If you could type that in the chat, that would be great. If not, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Tom, and seconded by Greg. Thank you. Next is the approval of the minutes, that the minutes of the Business Committee meeting held February 14th, 2024 be approved. Moved by Leanna and seconded by Tom. We have no presentations, so that moves us into senior staff reports. So we have Secretary Treasurer Mark Walsh and Jackie Poulin, Assistant Superintendent, RE, a childcare update.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chair. And you'll see Diane McGonigal is there with Jackie as well. And so you're seeing the kind of architect of our successful pilot this evening, who's here to answer some questions. So I wouldn't want to start without acknowledging the work that Diane has done on this file. And so what you're seeing this evening is a recommended motion that I can now the motion can be theoretically a little bit different, but what we're recommending is that the pilots that we do have currently at Hammond Bay and Pleasant Valley are maintained, as well as we look to expand up to 1 to 3 additional sites. What, however, has changed since the drafting of this, in fact, is that we are looking at getting some funding to support some of the challenges that we've outlined from an administrative and management perspective as we look to expand our pilots. So what we've said, there's some labor relations issues, there's some administrative issues, there's some ensuring that we can fill positions, etc., and some costs associated with the programming that we've tried to incorporate in the costs that we're charging parents to do. Of course, Diane's support is funded from a different envelope that won't be here for much longer. So, the long-term viability of what is a great pilot, having mainly EAs and some RAs support before and after school care in our systems, we can only do it if we're not using K-12 dollars to subsidize it. So what we're looking at with respect to a grant is some dollars to do exactly that, is so have a bit of time through the money to plan and use that funds to subsidize any differentials in expansion. So we'd be looking at likely a manager role as well as a clerical role. We haven't finalized these plans yet to expand. The sites have not been chosen because, of course, we're here to come to the board first to get support for expansion. And then, of course, the few of the conversations we have to have, Rutherford seems like a natural place to expand, but obviously the school is not going to be open in September. So will that be 2 in this September, 1 in this additional, and then Rutherford in the following year, etc. Some of those things have to be ironed out, but until we had board support, we didn't want to come here. Start going too depth into the planning. So I think overall it's been a big success from the perspective of our staff, from the perspective of our parents, and again, the hiccups have been noted. Of course, we chose 2 sites, one with kind of sufficient EA supports to, have a healthy complement of people on site at any given time, and then Hammond Bay with space, but not as many people. And so some of the challenges there are valuable lessons for us as we proceed forward. So if Jackie or Diane would like to comment, otherwise we're happy to answer questions. The motion is there, and we look forward to hearing from our CUPE partners here at the end of the month. We have indicated what our intention is with our CUPE partners in advance of this meeting as well. and indicated that we are looking at some funds to be able to support expansion.
Thanks, Mark. I think you've summed it up quite well, and we'll just here to answer questions if there are any.
Just give it a second here. It doesn't look like there's any questions at the moment. Chantel.
Type today. How many students are we providing
Right.
before and after? Oh, can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. Just if you could remind me, we're doing 2 schools right now. How many students are we providing before and after school care for again in those sites? Do we off the top of your head? You know, totally like.
Both sites are licensed for 24 students, but because of part-time students, or some only attend mornings, some only attend afternoons, we're supporting about 30 or 32 students at each site.
And would that look similar, or is it space, like, you know how we have area sizes for our classrooms and things like that? Is there that as well when it comes to us providing before and after school care? Like, is there like, you know, limits to how many students depending on the size?
Yes.
Like strict limits, or is it more like, okay, we can't fit possibly 60 kids in here kind of thing, right? But is there like, you said license, so.
No, it's strict limits.
Okay.
And so some of our spaces across the district that are also used for childcare are only licensed for 20 students because they're a bit of a smaller room. Multi-purpose rooms generally are 24 students, or that size of a classroom.
Okay,
We do have to meet all of the regular childcare licensing requirements, even though we're district operated, we still have to meet all of the childcare licensing requirements that happen with it.
Thank you. You know, I think that was actually my question, and thank you for answering that, because that is the wider question there. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tanya?
Thank you, through the chair, to either Jackie and Diane or Mark or both, all three of you. My internet kind of went wonky for a minute there, and I did miss part of what you said, Mark. You were talking about 3 locations in Rutherford as a possibility. What, like, did I miss? Is there a criteria or a checklist or what that you guys use to sort of determine where you want to put these childcare spaces?
Well, I can answer how he came up with the previous 2. First was we had an enthusiastic principal at Pleasant Valley before she left that put up her hand to support Seamless Day, and it made sense to offer expanded before and after school care and continued enthusiasm from the principal level. Hammond Bay, it just made a natural fit because ironically, it's one of our emptiest schools in the school district, despite being one of the newest, because of the nature of French immersion. And so we had space available to us for that purpose. Next up, of course, Rutherford has a bit of a space, but as well as, the board has directed us to make sure that it's viable. And so offering those services is there. I think that Jackie and Diane will put their heads together, and I'm sure we'll have schools that are going to put their hands up to provide service, but I don't know if Jackie and Diane have contemplated that yet.
We take a number of factors into consideration, what the wait lists are. So we reach out to the elementary schools and find out what kind of demand is at them and what's already being offered in the community and in the school. Most of our elementary schools have third-party providers that are offering before and after that rent space from our schools, and that's been a very common practice. So figuring out what the space is, where else we can add to, and whether or not there's a demand. So we want to make sure that it's a school that if we're going to increase by 24 licenses and spaces, that we actually have the students to fill them.
Thank you. And I think that I probably could have worded my question differently, because I guess really what I was getting at, what I'm thinking about, is both the demand issues and the issues that in some areas of the community, we have families that are lower socioeconomic status, don't have access to vehicles necessarily. So on-site childcare is a heck of a lot easier when you're dealing with all those economic struggles than trying to find one that you have to figure out how to get your kid there and back. So there is a sort of a list that you look at. So I guess what my follow-up would be, and sorry, Leanne, I just jumped in here. At some point, as we continue, if this grows, I wonder about, and this is just a thought that I'm putting out because it's been in my head for a while, like maybe an AP or a check in the AP that we might have the sort of criteria that we consider or the factors that we consider in these things, so that they're there if you two are ever not here to, I'm just a big believer in having a historical record of how we do things or how we've done things, so that we can not reinvent the wheel.
I can be pretty sure that we will be leaving, and I know that Diane has been very, very diligent about having a really clear process, and that process will be outlined for sure.
Okay, thank you. Back to you. Thank you,
Chantel, I see you have another question.
I was hoping somebody else might have one, so I don't take up everyone's time, but I'm going to ask this question, and I know you guys know I'm going to ask this question. How are we doing? And this goes towards the advocacy that we're going to have to do as a district as well, towards having inclusive childcare in our district. The good things that have happened, the hard things that have happened, and what we can do to support that advocacy work and making sure that happens in our district.
It continues to be, the childcare does have to be at a cost neutral aspect. So it's not to take, as Mark did indicate, it's not to come from the K-12 funding. So it does have to be cost neutral. We have been able to provide some additional support just because we had some funding that was a little bit of a carryover from Seamless Day, because Diane's position is currently funded out of another, pocket of funding. We've had some flexibility this year, so we have been trying to work towards making sure that students who need childcare, but that will be an ongoing challenge for us. That is to try and advocate to the ministry, but also to figure out how we can do it financially and make sure that it's cost neutral.
And one of the points that we've discussed as well is the more sites we have, the more likely we are able to charge a sufficient number to theoretically subsidize some spots. And so if we go that direction on a permanent basis, we just need to be very straightforward to our parents, particularly if the government doesn't have funding to support some aspects of the childcare. But when you have 5 or 6 or whatever, you have more opportunities to kind of spread the administrative and extra expenses at one site to another.
So do you have anything particular that you want us to take back and advocate for? I know that Supported Child Development sort of gets involved with this because they're supposed to fund students who need that extra support. Anything that you could think of that could help us with that at all?
We continue to have really open conversations with Supported Childcare. We are working with them quite closely, and I think just them knowing that our district has a very strong JEDI and inclusive lens on the things helps with everything that we do with them.
Fantastic.
And additionally, I would add too that part of the advocacy does need to be a thank you because they really did come through with this pilot funding. Now it's not permanent, but it's also very flexible. And we're one of the few districts that's going to be, working through that. So we are going to be a model for the province to see. But we have this rule in facilities that I can't ask you to do more with the same or less. We do more with more, and that's really actually what we're looking at for the expansion with this recent funding. So very, very appreciative of that.
Thank you, everyone, for all your hard work and trying to make this happen for all parents. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. I don't see any more questions. So thank you so much for the update. Would someone be willing to move the motion that's attached on the agenda? Okay, Craig.
That The Business Committee recommends that the Board of Education of School District number 68, Nanaimo Ladysmith, continue providing the before and after school care programs at Pleasant Valley and Hammond Bay Elementary and support in principle the expansion to an additional 1 to 3 sites, subject to the assurance that the expansion will be on a without prejudice basis with respect to labor relations issues, and that additional external funding is made available.
Thanks, Greg. Seconded by Tanya. So now we'll just vote. If you are opposed, could you just type it in the chat? Sorry, Greg, I should have asked if you wanted to motivate.
That's okay. I think we had great report and I didn't really have anything to add anyways.
All right, so motion carries. Moving on to 8.2, we have Mark Walsh and Jackie Poulin with a Feeding Futures update.
Great. So again, we're not going to speak too much on this, except for to say that the folks that are doing the amazing work are here on, or we're on the screen. I'm on the screen now, but Jackie and Diane here to talk a little bit about or answer questions. It's going swimmingly and it's responsive, and our partners at the foundation are doing quite amazing work. Being part of groups around the province discussing how this is going from a kind of secretary treasurer level lens. You can see some districts, having some difficulties with the kind of task of making this a reality in schools, and it's going very well here and so you could see how many kids are getting fed right now. So what I will also say is that our secondary programs largely running the way that they should be. Positive access for our students to have the food. Cedar has come up with a Made in Cedar option at Cedar Secondary, and Wellington also, I think they're just kicking off their cafeteria program at the end of spring break. Just working out some final things with in-house staff. And just one quick anecdote is that I was talking with Andrea Davidson, the principal of Wellington, and she indicated that so they put out a survey on menu options that the students would like to see in the cafeteria program, and they had faster and more robust feedback than they've ever had on any question they've ever asked the school before. So they ask about education, some crickets, but you ask about what the kids want to eat at lunchtime, and boy, did they heard some feedback. So a lot of excitement at the secondary level. And so Jackie, I don't know if you want to add comment before we answer questions, but really great work, and the foundation is a valued partner.
A huge shout out again, as you had already said, to the Nanaimo Ladysmith Schools Foundation, working with Crystal Dennison and her team. They have stepped up at an incredible pace in regards to getting this out and getting it rolling. A huge thank you to Diane and to our principals and vice principals in our elementary schools for being, quick and responsive and finding ways to make sure that they can get information to Crystal and then get food to students in a respectful manner. I will share that last week we actually had a visit from some individuals from the ministry, from Food BC and from the Ministry of Agriculture and Food, who wanted to kind of come through and tour our facility and talk about our program and what it's looking like, and had a lot of positive response from them. There have been a lot of challenges in various districts, and being able to partner with the Nanaimo Ladysmith Schools Foundation has been a huge benefit for us, for sure.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm just looking to see if anyone has any questions before I let you go. Doesn't look like it, so thank you so much. Oh, no, Chantal.
I think unfortunately things take a little too long on the chat button. I almost wonder if we should just pop on here. I'm so excited that we have 25 of our elementary schools are doing stuff. They've already done 1,600 breakfasts and 2,000 lunches per week. That is enormous. I just raise my hands to everybody who's thought of our kids and the need that they have to eat. It's our basic human need and right to be able to feed ourselves. And it's great that we have the capacity to be able to do that. I'm so grateful for everybody for doing all this hard work. What I do have a question about the Wellington, the cafeteria program, and they're just instituting it coming up there after March break. Is this going to be like a cafeteria program where some students have to pay and then some students kind of get like a voucher, or what kind of program? Kind of, if you could sort of elaborate a little bit more on that, that would be really awesome.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I can start. And one thing is that we're not doing 25 elementary schools. We're doing 27 elementary schools. There's just two are doing something slightly different than the rest of them. So just to be clear, they're covered. With respect to Wellington, the intention is to have a charge. So students that can pay will pay, students that can't pay, and they're just working through what an equitable and kind of a Jedi lens looks like to make sure that that's respectful and done in the most positive way that it can be. I don't quite know what it looks like yet, because it might, take some shifts and changes when it starts, but it will be similar to our other location, other secondaries. Staff will ensure that the kids that aren't able to afford it are going to be fed in a respectful way. And just so you know, Wellington also has a breakfast program that doesn't charge. It won't, and will continue not to charge.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you for all your hard work.
All right. There's no other questions. Leanna just commented that, of course, it is amazing that we're able to partner with the foundation, because without them, this work would have been significantly more challenging. So I definitely appreciate them as well. Thank you so much. All right, moving on to number 8.3. We are going to hear from Mark Walsh and Pete Sabo regarding the annual facilities grant submission. And we might not see Pete. He's having a little bit of a...
Oh, he's arrived.
We've got him. Look at this. He's fixed his screen. Perfect. All right.
So thank you, Chair. So I just want to perhaps highlight, I think we've gone through some cycles now where the board is likely aware the annual facilities grant, a yearly amount that's given to us from the Ministry of Education and Childcare to maintain our facilities, to enhance, a variety of aspects of our facilities, etc. So obviously the money is not enough to start chipping away at our facilities maintenance deficit, but it has gone up in the recent past. And given our in-housing of work, so given the amount of work that we're able to achieve in-house, not all of that money has disappeared to inflation, although some of it has, of course, because a lot of stuff gets done in summer and we'll just never have enough staff to be able to do it all ourselves in that kind of short window. So I do want to just take a moment to appreciate facilities for expanding the footprint of what they're able to do with our partners, with our employees generally. Then a couple of changes you'll see, and then I just want to kind of bring to bear one aspect that we're trying to work through from a communications perspective. So two major changes you'll see we are working to include some of the technology infrastructure upgrade money, so the Wi-Fi project upgrade, into annual facilities grant. Previously, that money was coming from local capital, which was often coming from board surplus moved into local capital, where the project doesn't have too long to go. And so hopefully the board will still have some local capital be able to support it. But it is an annual facilities grant matter. And so when we come up to the spring and we start thinking, oh, we need to transfer money to local capital, and we have other kind of immediate education needs, it won't be quite as a significant requirement to transfer. So that's one shift. Another shift that you're going to see is an increasing amount for accessibility, both specific projects. But what the facilities team, working alongside the kind of new legislation, and Carrie and myself, we've been talking about, is the idea of creating, so we have a contingency generally in our annual facilities grant. So every project we kind of pad. and I don't like the money comes back to us, so it's not a bad thing from padding, but it makes sure that we're not going to be over budget and coming to the board and saying, oh, by the way, those roofs that we said were going to cost 793,000, they're actually $1 million and we don't have the money to do it. That just does not happen in our facilities department, and applause to them for that. But what we're also going to add, though, is a what we're calling an accessibility contingency. And so that's the idea that if we're going to open up a wall or we're going to do work in a room, well, let's have a lens of accessibility that we actually have some money that our planners are able to say, oh, great, well, the doorknobs need changing while we're in here, or we need to wire it for, door openers at, wheelchair level or something along that lines. And I don't have the list. I'm not a specialist in that area, and facilities will certainly engage someone to assist in that. But again, I want to applaud that shift with respect to perspective and the openness to incorporate some of those aspects into our planning. So very impressive. Otherwise, you see pretty much a list of things that are mostly have-to-dos. We don't really have much of an opportunity to shift those things away. But lastly, I do want to acknowledge an area that I think has raised some frustration in our system a bit. So what we do is we say to schools, hey, what are the things that you want? Your capital list, like the main things that you want. And so what they do is schools, they put this list of typically 5 things, and these are the priorities of the school. It's gender neutral washroom, it's I don't know, a change to some kind of room, or accessibility to some space, whatever it happens to be. But ultimately, the annual facilities grant is not sufficient enough to realistically let us get access to a whole bunch of those things. And so we create a bit of an expectation in our community that go, well, you made us chop it down to 5. So let's get at least our 1, kind of like we do at capital planning time with the ministry. And so we're kind of working through the best communication formula to create some realistic expectations out there in our community, because you can't not do a roof and replace it with a community garden or a school garden, as an example. It's just not it's not a wise investment for the long-term viability of our buildings, and so we are restricted in that regard. So overall, again, I just want to express appreciation for facilities, for the shifts that they've made, for their ability to deliver with our own in-house forces. And I look forward to getting these things done. Certainly, I know they will be on budget. I will express a request for appreciation if we are a little delayed on occasion, because we do have a lot of needs out there. But overall, I think this is a great plan that meets the needs of our schools, as well as obviously the basic needs of maintenance. So I don't know, Pete, if you want to add anything else, or we go to questions, and Pete, will you answer them?
Yes, I'm available for questions, and I did just want to put out a shout out to Brian Hackwood and his team of planners. Not only have they do the plan every year, but they actually take the plan through to completion and or handoff for construction. And then of course they do the project wrap up and submissions to the ministry, etc. Huge body of work, as you can see, the number of projects that are ongoing to be done. And thank you. Available for questions.
Thanks. I'll just start so we can give the chat a second. I really appreciate the point that you're making regarding communications to schools. I know sometimes some of those requests from schools are coming from a student lens, i.e. we'll use a rainbow crosswalk, or some sort of beautification project within the school. And I think being able to communicate that to students in a better fashion would be really helpful to, their student voice, and knowing that they, they're being heard. But sometimes, obviously there's a lot of constraints within the system to make what they seem to think is something very simple happen. So I do appreciate that. Tom, you have a question?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. Hi, Pete, and thanks for joining us. I'm going to ask you what I've always asked you about, except for this time I got a little positive preamble, because I've just been delighted watching the facility go up at George Avenue. over the last few months with, what is that? That's a straight daycare going in there, right?
That's our childcare program going in.
Yeah.
And there's infant, toddler, 3 to 5, and before and after care envisioned in that building.
Yeah, you're already giving me the update I'm looking for. What's the timeline on that?
Aha, you've caught me a little bit. I don't have my finger on the exact timeline.
I apologize.
We are moving along very quickly, and the construction is such that if you give me a few minutes, I might be able to look it up online and provide that to you. If not, I'll be able to follow up with it.
I would love a follow-up. My comment was mostly around just how impressed I've been with the progress on the site, and talking to the team over at Georgia, that it's really been easy for the staff to accommodate, and the kids really enjoy watching it happening. So just another great work. So thank you for that.
Chantel?
You know what? How about you let Jeff go? And I'll go after.
Sure, sounds good. Jeff?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just a quick question, I guess, to Mark. I'm just looking at the report here. It says a net amount of the grant is expected to remain equal to the funding received in 2023-2024. But there's over a 500,000 increase. Is that eaten up by wages and material costs that have gone up? Feels like a high number. That's all.
So I believe that we anticipate the number is not going to grow this year in any significant fashion. It's going to remain elevated from last year, is I think our intention. So we don't actually know the final number yet until funding is going to be announced. When you look at the provincial budget, there was a small increase, I believe, to AFG envisioned, but it wasn't significant. Last year was the big jump.
Gotcha. Okay, sorry, I misunderstood the part of that report. Thanks.
All right, Chantel.
Yeah, I read that too that way, and I'm like, oh, thank you. that explains a bit. I was gonna say, what are you gonna do if you don't have that $500,000? I really appreciate just that contingency and the accessibility piece. I mean, that totally is absolutely fantastic. These are just clarifying questions to understand further the information we're receiving here. And it's like I see like ones that say planning. And I will pick out the accessibility planning one. What does that mean? Like the planning, does that mean like kind of like getting the drawings done up and stuff like that? Like, am I assuming correctly on what that means?
Yes, if I might, through the chair, that's exactly what it means. And so some projects can't be planned and constructed in that approval year. So what we're trying to do is make sure that our planning team has enough time to plan it out correctly, do the budgeting, make sure they have everybody, all the stakeholders informed. And then at that point, we know better what the budget for the project will be, and then we'll budget for it in the following year. And so we've been looking to find that balance between the projects that can be planned and funded in 1 year reasonably, and then the projects that need that 2-year planning or the 1 year planning prior to construction.
Okay, great. Yeah, because the Pauline Herrera, the accessibility ramps for the gym exit and the main exit on the Tim Hortons side, that requires some real thought, because there's the elevation and everything that you have to think of, and it's more complicated sometimes than it seems at first light. So
yes, again, that's correct. Planners can hurry projects and get something in place, but planners that have a little bit more time can often find a more cost-effective solution that operates better for the schools.
it's a really great point, Pete. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it.
All right, I don't see any other questions. Last chance. All right. So we'll move on to 8.4. Mark Walsh is going to talk to us about the paper reduction strategy.
Thank you, Chair. And so this item was just brought forward from the last business where it was published, but we didn't speak to it because the meeting was canceled. And we do have Kylie Lowe and Zayed Merchant are both present at the meeting this evening, who are the leaders of this particular project. So I want to give huge level of appreciation to the planning, the procurement, the training, the communication. I think everything was done incredibly well to put this out there. You can imagine trying to take someone's single-use printer away, how many friends that makes you. And I just really do appreciate the ability of Zayed and his team and Kylie and her team to be able to respond to concerns. So you'll see this is kind of the first report. So we're not giving you, hey, we've made a massive amount of progress. We're here giving you the baseline data to a certain extent. And so the report's there for you to see. I'm not sure, maybe Zayed, if you want to pop on, if you have any perspectives that you want to give, any updates since we did this. The top users, you'll see we blanked all the names out. No one's getting called out. Very good reasons for printing a variety of things. Often they would end up being the secretary of a school or administrative assistant at a department, etc. So it just gives you those data points are just giving you an example of the kinds of things that we can access to be able to support paper reduction. And so I will ask Kylie and I will ask Zayed if they have anything that they would just like to add, a little bit more data. And if you don't, it's okay, because this is our baseline.
Well, through you, Chair, I don't really have much to add, Mark. The information sheet, if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. But I mean, I'm just going to reinforce something that's in the information sheet and what Mark has mentioned, that what this has really done centrally is to give access and visibility to any budget manager who has printing as a budget line to actually really correlate what that budget line does to the actual consumption, right down to user level, the number of pages, the amount of toner and paper that's actually responsible for that budget line, and it allows them to use that as actionable data. And I will say that one of the things that has really driven this is the fact that it's grounded in environmental stewardship action plan, and I think that without such a goal articulated, and motivated by the board, a project like this takes on a different sort of shape and a different result. You've got collaboration, you've got understanding, you've got a lot of people willing to make their sacrifices, if you will, on the conveniences, right, of personal printers at their desk and printing as much as they need to or want to. It's driving people to find out more innovative ways to actually do the same things that they were doing before, but in maybe digital ways, and questioning whether they should buy printers or they need to print something. So it's been really great working with Kylie and the finance team, and everyone's really come together. And it's been a bit painful at schools, make no mistake about it, because it is a shift in practice. We've had a couple of technical challenges, but we're working through them as well. And so, yeah, that's really all I want to add, Kylie.
Yeah, I don't think I really have much to add at this point. Like Mark said, we're just providing an update of where things are at right now. And then hopefully once we get some more months under our belts and people get used to the new system and the new software that's been installed, we can come back and provide you guys with some more details as far as number of copies, what that reduction actually looks like, and fingers crossed, hopefully there is a reduction after all of this. So yeah, hopefully maybe next year we can come back with some more information. But
and one thing to add too is we understand that paper is integral to a lot of the teaching practice that we have, and I can show you my desk and show you the reports that are printed. But a couple of things. that we do notice with the paper cut software is you don't have that wastage of pressing print 4 times, mistakenly forgetting that you'd already done it, and it's sitting there for you. You actually have to release it, and that's a pretty positive. That's going to have a huge impact on its owner. Has had an impact that we anticipate we'll be able to show you soon. And the other one is Mary Zucchero in facilities kind of heads up the Energy Cup. So schools kind of compete for this, and that's a model that we may want to go back and have a look at, because school to school there's actually some very interesting discrepancies that are not explained by school size. We don't know what it means yet, but it's very intriguing that we have that kind of level, that level of data. And like, as an example, we know the Dover kids are really trying to preserve, limit the use of paper. And ironically, Dover, being one of the larger schools, is sitting there, under Wellington as an example, and not just it gives us quite an interesting look at our practices in the district, and we look forward to kind of regularly updating on how things go.
Perfect. Thanks so much. I think this is just a great thing for just awareness overall, right? At a school, everyone can see where they're at, and it just might make them think twice about, do I really need to do this? Could we do this a different way, right? So I think, yeah, time will tell. Greg, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, through you, Chair, to staff. Thanks for the report. It was interesting reading this, and we don't really on our side get a sense of like the scale of things that we're talking about until you take a look at some of the stats. And I think it's good to see like where we are, and then potentially where we could go. Total printed pages 9.9 million, for example. Like that's quite a few pages of paper. So and my question is, this is good. We always have to know where we came from to know what kind of progress we make over time. And I'm wondering if longer term, if we've given any thought around what support the board could provide to support teachers and other staff to not be so reliant on paper. So rather than just reducing printing, which is awesome, but longer term, are there other things that could be considered to support learning and the work that staff has to do?
Well, I can, through Chair and Zaid, may want to comment a little bit more, and maybe Laura wants to as well. But one of the things that I think it's important to note is the board already supports technology for teachers in the sense of providing laptops availability. The board has supported the expansion of functional, Wi-Fi to make, technology an actual go-to resource in schools. And so there's been heavy investments that have led to that, us, I guess we'd say, having the technical groundwork to be able to really go to a paperless world. Not in reality, there's positives in people's practices often, incorporate paper into that, but the groundwork is there. And so, if there's positive practices, then that's going to be, pushed by our kids not accepting, different practices that rely too much on paper, as well as, again, us ensuring that there's the funds there to support the access to digital technologies to be able to do that. I don't know if Laura wants to put you on the spot to comment on the kind of Pro-D opportunities or things that we do, but that's obviously something that would be pretty important to kind of to help people get where they need to go on that front.
I'm not sure if you want. Yeah, I think Mark's captured that really well. We have, I just look at our most recent situations with our PIAs with the apps, and the number of, sort of digital instructional tools and measures that teachers are utilizing these days is quite large. And so it is certainly an area that has a big focus and lots of support with lots of professional learning going on around that for sure.
Thank you, Mark and Laura. So I think what I'm hearing is I'm glad you mentioned and reminded us of the significant investment that the board has made over the last number of years on technology. So perhaps it's just something that will take time, you know, teachers and students kind of being more accepting of the use of that over paper perhaps, and, you know, maybe over time then there'll be more uptake on that use of technology perhaps.
Yeah, and through you, Chair, I think Zayed made a point that I think is really important because it's actually this is a great example of where board, you know, 20,000 foot decisions lead to ground level, you know, action. And so the board has an environmental sustainability plan that, you know, envisions you know, us doing these type of actions. So it leads us to not only do it, but it also invites us to be able to do it. So, you know, when we say to that department or we say to that area that single printer use is not going to be there anymore because of these environmental impacts, not even a money saver, pure environmental impact on that front, you know, the board's kind of goals have led to these actions on the ground level. So it's a great connection. And then the board, of course, adding funding has made it work as well. So I think it's a great example of plans and strategies and how they flow through the system.
Great. No, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you so much. There's no more questions, so we can move on to 8.5, deletion of AP 421 contract labor. Once again, Mark Walsh.
Great, thank you, Chair. And so I'll get everyone, Karen, you don't need to bring this up, but if you have the agenda in front of you, look at the bottom left-hand corner of page 33 of 33, or adopted October 12th, 1983, amended January 11th, 1984. So, and not been looked at ever since. And so here's a great example of what was probably a very effective, I assume, board policy way back in 1984. We've consulted with, we've ensured to talk to our partners with CUPE to make sure it doesn't impact anything that we're doing. We continue to be committed to in-housing, and this policy never had anything to do with our CUPE partners anyway. Essentially, what it would say is when we went out to get Hammond Bay as an example, and we put out a bid, the AP would have required us to use unionized labor, which is not actually contrary. It's contrary to what the requirements of kind of modern practices with respect to going out for bids are. And so it's been on the books, and we actually haven't necessarily applied it and I can't find a time when we actually have added it to our RFPs. So rather than change that, so if the provincial government expands their requirements for RFPs for big projects, as example, like I know they have in some areas, you know, required unionized labor, etc. That doesn't apply to our sector yet, as far as I'm aware. And so the deletion is just to bring in practice in line, something we haven't done in anyone that I could find memory with respect to requests for proposals, and it doesn't impact our employees or our practice at all. It's just the pet peeve that you think you've heard me say many, many times, having an AP on the books that we don't do is not a good way to practice. And so the deletion is intended to occur.
Thanks for the update, Mark. Just wait a sec here to see if anyone has any questions. I think the info sheet is pretty self-explanatory. I don't see any questions. So we'll go on to number 9, correspondence referred from the regular board meeting. There is none. We have no unfinished business, no new business, no for information. Karen, are there any questions? No, there are no questions. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Chantel and Tanya. Right, thanks so much. I hope you all have a wonderful spring break and you enjoy your break and get some rest and spend time with those that you love. Have a good evening.
Happy
Thank you,
spring break,
everyone.
everybody. Take care.
Yeah.